Hello again, everyone. Michael Zupan here with Bite-Size Impressions, and today I want to do another one of those I just beat a game, so let me talk about it videos. And the timing for talking about the game that I want to talk about today couldn't be better, and the reason why I say that is because the game is The Witcher 2. As most of us are aware, CD Projekt Red, unless they delay it again, is going to be releasing The Witcher 3 in May. And not only that, but if you have an Xbox Live Gold membership and you still have your Xbox 360 kicking, it is going to be the game for you to download this month with your Xbox Live Gold membership. So let's get right to it. Is The Witcher 2 a good game? And I would say, yeah, it's a really good game. I'm not going to say it's a great game. I'm not going to say it's amazing. I'm not even going to say that it lives up to most of the hype that fans of this game have sort of been putting out there on the web. If you talk to anybody who has played The Witcher 2, just go to message boards, just go to Reddit, wherever, where people have talked about this game, and they're like, oh my god, it is like the best game of last generation. You need to play it. Anytime I hear something like that, I'm like, okay, the game's got to be good, but how good? I'm probably hearing a lot of hyperbole here. And I did find that to be the case with The Witcher 2. It's not as amazing as everybody makes it out to be. There are a lot of flaws with this game. So let's first talk about the good stuff, and we'll get to the stuff that doesn't really work as well. What does work, hands down, is the story and character development. Basically, you are the Witcher, you're Geralt of Rivia, and you don't really know a lot about your past, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of stuff that's kicking up in the land around you. Basically, there's a lot of factions that are vying for control and power over this land, and of course, we have certain entities that say, we have a king, we think that we deserve control over this part of the land, and then you have another group of people that are saying, no, 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 this isn't right, we should be free, we are free people, we will govern ourselves, It's very, very rich and deep, and there's a lot of different moving chess pieces on the board at any given time. There's a lot of characters and people that you're going to get to know. And the great thing is that no matter how small the character you come across is, they seem to have their own story. They seem to have their own history. And much like in the Dragon Age games, you're going to talk to pretty much everybody that you come across. And you're going to learn about that individual person. You're going to feel like you're a part of this world. You're going to hear a lot of things from these people that's going to describe everything about them as well as the story of everything that's going on in general, which is fantastic. There are so many games nowadays, I would say a majority of them, that don't really get into the nitty-gritty like that. And while you feel like you're playing in a pretty cool world, they don't immerse you like this game does. The story unfolds over 3 chapters, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but you're going to be spending a lot of time in these chapters. I mean, I probably spent at least 10 hours in Chapter 1, probably 15 or more in Chapter 2, and Chapter 3, well, let's talk about Chapter 3 in a little bit, shall we? One of the other things that really does sort of work in this game, for the most part, is the combat system. The Witcher very wisely doesn't make it so that as long as your level is, here at this part of the game, you're going to overcome all your enemies. No, you could be an extremely high level in the game, and if you're not really sure how the combat mechanics work, pardon me, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Plain and simple. It's not as difficult as something like Dark Souls, but it's very similar in the respect that you can't just run in and hack and slash something until it dies and just say, ha 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 ha, I'm level 23, I have enough health to take care of you. It doesn't work that way. You have to make sure that you don't get surrounded so you don't get attacked in the back, because you take way more damage that way. You also have to know the patterns of your enemies. You have to know when to roll away. You have to know when to hack and slash. You have to know when to use light attacks versus heavy attacks, because if you're committing to a longer heavy attack, you're opening yourself up to attack yourself. So keeping that in mind, there's a lot to take into consideration. And there's not only just, the basic combat mechanics that I'm talking about. I'm also talking about you have to use magic. You have sort of a use the force kind of power where you can push enemies away from you just by using a magical force. There's sort of a little force field that you can use around you. There's like fireballs that you can use and sort of magical traps that you can place on the ground. You can also use physical traps that you can make using supplies. There's alchemy, so you can make potions that make your weapons stronger, that give you more health, that make your vitality recover faster in combat, and so on and so forth. There is a lot to take into consideration. And as a matter of fact, one of the weak parts of this game is the tutorial before you even get into the story. I tried picking up this game the other year on PC, and the tutorial completely shut me off because all these aspects of the gameplay they throw at you in 5 minutes, and I'm like in front of my PC and I'm holding the controller and I'm just like, this is so overwhelming. Like, I don't, this is going to be crazy. So, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was turned off from the game at that time. I'm glad I gave it another chance because as soon as you get into the game, you're like, oh, wow, they don't throw that much at you at once. Like, you gradually do have to get into it. I like the fact that you have to be smart. I like the fact that, you have to not just stay within the confines of like those 5 feet around an enemy. You have to utilize an entire battlefield, if you want to call it that. Run around, place traps, do what you have to do. It's smart, it's fun, it's challenging too, up to a certain point. And that's where my first sort of issue with the game is. And I guess this might not be much of an issue if you just want to run through the campaign and forget most of the side quests. But because I did do almost all of the side quests, I gained a lot of levels in the game, and I did figure out where to use my skill points, because you can't get enough skill points to unlock everything in the 4 skill trees that you have available to you, so you do have to be kind of wise. But I did get to a point where I wasn't so overpowered that if I wasn't careful, I wasn't going to get killed. But for the most part, as long as I kept doing 1 or 2 certain things in a sort of spammy sort of way, I was going to be fine. So the last half of the game was really sort of a breeze for me. So the combat's really great and smart, although they probably could have done a little bit more to keep the balancing of the difficulty. They could have done something with that to make it a bit better so that you didn't feel so overpowered. But, whatever. It's a small, minor complaint in the grand scheme of things. Again, the story and the character development is the real star here and more than worth playing the game for. But where I do have a little bit of an issue is that, as I said, there's 3 chapters, right? And it's not an open world game. Each chapter has an open-ish area, but it's kind of linear. Like in the first chapter and the second chapter, you have a town that you visit. And then this town is more or less living and breathing, and you get to see people pop up during the day to open up their shops, to be at the inn, to sell their wares, whatever. And then the game actually goes through a day and night cycle, so you see these people disappear in the evening and other sort of things happen. But you go in these towns and just like any other RPG, it's where you can see a blacksmith and craft new weapons or armor. It's where you can go to the inn or even the brothel. It's where you can do a bunch of little side quests and actually talk to the people that you need to in order to get certain quests to begin. You're going to be spending most of your time in these towns, though, which is part of the issue. Once you get to a certain point in a lot of these quests, they're going to say, oh, you have to go out into the forest and you have to do so-and-so. And the forest in Chapter 1 is really cool. There's not really free reign through a lot of it. There's a lot of paths and there's a lot of different ways that you can go. And there's some really cool stuff in that forest as well. But for the most part, you're just going out there to do whatever you have to do and then go back to town and collect your reward and, whatever. But it was okay because the quests were really interesting. There was a lot of really cool, different, unique things to do out in that forest. It was worth going out there time and time again for the various different quests. Chapter 2, though, I started to feel like the design of the town was actually hurting the game a bit. It's a big town. It's set in a mountainside pretty much. So like all the inns and the rooms and whatever, they're all built into the walls of this mountain. And because, mountains, they're vertical, they go up. You have 3 different tiers for the town. Some of the parts you have to kind of like walk up a ramp to get to the next tier. Sometimes you have to find a door that has stairs that leads you up to the other tier. It gets really confusing after a while, especially when you're trying to find the next part of a quest. Because when you look at your map, which in most of the game is very helpful, the map is flat, and it doesn't really give you an accurate depiction of the 3 tiers of this town. So you could be on the first tier, and the map marker might tell you to go here. You go there, and then all of a sudden you look at your map again, you're like, why did the map marker move? And it's because you might have gone up to the next tier just enough where the marker is going to move to show you now where you have to go on this tier in order to be able to reach your destination. It's crazy. And then sometimes, you'll be on the wrong tier, so you end up next to a wall, and you're like, the marker's on the other side. How am I supposed to get in there? Is there a door that I missed somewhere that I could walk into, and then maybe the quest markers in the room on the other side here? Or am I supposed to be on a different tier? I really didn't know. And until I really discovered what the entire lay of the land of this town was supposed to be, I was really confused for quite some time, probably half of my time in Chapter 2 in this town, in the mountain. It was craziness, and I probably spent at times like a half an hour trying to reach a marker when it really shouldn't have been that confusing. So I don't think I'm the only one who has had that problem. Even if I'm amongst a minority, it's still something of a design flaw. And also because of the setting, which I understand for the story, it was a cool setting. It sort of was kind of drab for a while. And like I'm playing through this chapter, which is like 15 hours of gameplay time, and I was so tired of seeing those rocky walls all the time. But of course, just like in Chapter 1, there is a wilderness for you to go out and explore and do certain quests and whatnot. But compared to how much time you were actually spending in the town, it just didn't even seem like it was very unbalanced. I wanted to spend more time out in the wilderness, roaming around. I can appreciate that The Witcher 2 wasn't an open world game. It didn't need to be. Fortunately, though, despite the fact that the time inside the town and outside the town was not as balanced as I wish it would have been, because I did want to spend more time out in the greenery and near the water and whatever. The thing that really kind of, I think, disappointed me the most about Chapter 2 is, I'm sorry, not disappointing me the most, it's saving grace is what I meant to say. I apologize. The saving grace is the story, because in Chapter 2, this is where things really, really finally come to a head. This is where stuff really starts to happen. The finale for Chapter 2 is, it's mind-blowing. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And then you move into Chapter 3, I feel like Chapter 3 was over practically as soon as I began it. And that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but literally within like probably 2.5 hours of starting Chapter 3, it was over. Again, keep in mind, I probably spent like 10 and 15 hours in the first 2 acts respectively. So that's a major disappointment. And the area that you're in, you're kind of going through some sewers, and then you end up in this city square, which you're not really allowed to leave because there are guards outside of this square, and you're not supposed to be there, and they will kill you. You're pretty powerful at this point. Even with all the side quests that I had done, you get like at least 10 guys on your butt at the same time as soon as you walk through a door. You're gonna die, okay? There's not much I can do to protect myself in that situation. So I feel like this last part of the game was really, 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 really rushed. Not just because it was so short, but because the thought that went into um, the design of this last part of the game was just really, really lame. It's like they just dropped you off in this area and said, all right, do the last couple of quests and then you're done. Really sort of lame. So the game does have some issues with design and with the way that things pan out in the latter, chapter of the game. It's like it was rushed and, they could have done a bit more with it. I'm hoping that The Witcher 3, because it is open world, is going to rectify a bit of this, but I'm really anxious to see how CD Projekt Red handles an open world game. I hope that everything doesn't really feel the same, like it's the same repetitious fetch quest over and over and over again. They sort of went away from that in Witcher 2. They diversified things enough. But anyway, despite those complaints, yes, I do have to say that The Witcher 2 is a really good game. Not great, not amazing. It has its flaws, but the combat is solid for the most part until you feel like you're overpowered. The story and characters are amazing, and it's worth playing for alone. But I do really wish that Chapter 2, that location, was utilized in a different way. I do wish that Chapter 3 didn't feel like such a cheap rush job, but it is what it is. Not a perfect game, but you can go to pretty much Amazon or any other retail store and acquire a physical copy of this game for $20 or less. It's worth it. So, anyway, thanks for listening to me rant about The Witcher 2. I am excited, despite my complaints, for The Witcher 3 later this year. This is not a paid promotion video or anything like that. I don't do stuff like that on this website. I suppose I would have to say that if I ever do, I'd let you guys know, but it's never going to happen. So thanks for watching again, and I'll see you next time in some of the written pieces on the website or another podcast. Have a great 2015, everyone.